Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of Becoming More Me, the podcast for ADHD entrepreneurs and professionals who want to be more and do less. These episodes are here to inspire you to become more of the person you feel called to be in this world, and let it be easy. I'm your host, Teresa Lear-Levine, and I'm an EFT master practitioner, hypnotherapist, and international best-selling author of Becoming More Me, Tapping into Success, Subconscious Secrets of an ADHD Entrepreneurial Mom, helping you get out of your way, shed light on your shadows, be more and do less, and call your power back so that you can create the never-ending journey of becoming and make it one that you really want to get present for is my jam. Today, I'm talking with Jennifer Arthurton. And Jennifer is a former Fortune 500 marketing executive turned midlife mentor, podcast host, writer, and speaker. Having survived her own midlife crisis and subsequent course correction, she has a passion for helping women uncover the inherent power and wisdom of time of life when they often feel overlooked. And that's also a time when women tend to doubt themselves as they're growing older. So Jennifer is an inspirational speaker, as well as the founder and creator of the Maven Collective, and also Old Chicks Know Shit, which is a community and podcast designed to inspire and support midlife women in chasing their dreams and creating their next kick-ass chapter together. We're going to debunk some myths about aging, share some wisdom that can only come with the decades we've lived through, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to share Jennifer with you. It all starts now. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, I loved our last conversation when I was on your amazing podcast, Old Chicks Know Shit. So I know we're going to have a great conversation today. And I'm wondering if maybe we can just start by getting to know you outside of business, outside of all of that.
Yeah.
Just tell me a little bit about who Jennifer is, where you live, what you love to do in your free time that you enjoy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I am actually based in Canada, in Toronto. I live just outside the city. I used to live in the city, but during the pandemic, I moved out to sort of the country. So I'm surrounded by nature, which is so beautiful because that's how I like to spend a lot of my time is in the forest, like with my pup, just going for walks and not far from the lake. So on my you'll find me on my paddleboard in the middle of the lake in the summertime, which I did not do enough of this summer. Yeah, and just generally, I'm really trying to slow life down, just be
Yes.
very, very focused and intentional and just, slow down after years and years and years of go, 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 go. So it feels
Yes.
good. It feels good.
Yeah, you're speaking to the choir right there because it's yeah, slow is the new fast is the way that I like to think about it. And
Isn't
there's
that
so much
true?
that's how you tap into your focus and your intention. It's impossible the way that we've been conditioned to hustle and strive and constantly, like you said, go, 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 do, do, do instead of
Yeah.
being. So I love that you're spending time on your paddleboard, in your lake, and with your pup. What kind of dog do you have?
I have a Bernedoodle
Oh, cool. I've got two
who's
yellow
sitting right
labs.
here.
I've got one right on the other side of my desk, and the other one is just hoping I'll go play ball with him at some point when I get off of here with you. So that's amazing. Can you tell me a little bit? I mean, because I'm sitting here looking at you. We're on video, and there's nothing old looking about you, and yet you have this whole, platform. Old chicks know shit. So,
Mm.
how old are you, and how did you kind of get to that point of wanting to express yourself that way?
Yeah, so I am actually 58. And I still like I have these moments where I'm like, how did I get to be this old? Like I don't feel it, but like it's like I'm very aware of the passage of time. And and now I look at my daughter and I'm like, wait, wasn't I like 31 like 2 minutes ago? And now
Yeah.
that's where she is. So interestingly enough, Old Chicks Know Shit came from very early on in my corporate career when I was in my 20s and like in my early 20s, and I was part of a big team. And whenever new people would join the team, we would say, follow the old chicks because they know some shit. So was a kind of a bit of a joke, because we were in our 20s, like old chicks, right?
Yeah.
Then after what I call my midlife crisis, which was really a gift, that phrase came back to me like literally out of the blue. And it was just, it had a whole other meaning to it. And it really, for me, was because I went through this period of really like, doubting, like, am I too old to this? Am I too old to do that? Can I really start over? Like all of this kind of stuff. And really it was just to remind me that it's not about my age. It's really about who I've become in the process of this and what I know and all the knowledge and wisdom and experience. And I really, as I started having conversations with other women, I really wanted to remind them that it's got nothing to do with what's happening to our bodies or to our faces or gray hair or any of that kind of stuff. This chapter of life is really all about who we are and what gifts do we have to offer the world, because we all have them. So it has a whole other meaning. And I do get people who are like, why are you calling us old? And I'm like, okay, you're missing the point.
Well, sometimes it takes something polarizing to draw people in and get them curious.
Right?
So I enjoy the angle there. And knowing you as I do, I know that you're not calling it out in any kind of a negative or ageist
No,
kind of way.
no, not
So
at all. In fact, quite the opposite.
yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about this midlife crisis that you went through.
Yeah. So in the year leading up to my 50th birthday, I found myself divorced, unemployed, an empty nester, and I was also bedridden with a stress-related illness.
Oh,
So every identity of who I thought I was in the world was like literally stripped away from me in what seemed like which was a very short space of time. And so I had this little bit of an existential crisis that, like, if I'm not wife, mother, corporate executive, and at the time I was big into physical fitness, if I'm none of those things, then who am I? Because I had really defined myself by the roles that I played.
yeah.
And without those roles, I had no idea who the woman was underneath that. Like, what did she
Uh,
want? Who is she? Like, what are her gifts? I did not know, because I had become, in the process of, investing in my life like I did, I had become completely disconnected from myself.
mm,
And a lot of that had to do with, and I find this is common, I think, for a lot of us, is, we're given the rules of the game really early on in life. It's the list of things that you need to do, and you go along and you check off all the boxes, go to a good school, get good marks, get a corporate job, work your way up the ladder. But nowhere on that list does it say, hey, stop and check in with yourself to see if this is
right.
really what you want, if this really matters to you.
Yeah.
Right. So
Nobody tells you
I
what's at the other
had,
end of that list either. Like after you do all that,
right.
then what happens?
Right. So what was happening for me is, like, before, probably in a few years before, everything kind of fell apart, I would find myself in boardroom meetings, kind of half listening to what was going on. And I'd be thinking to myself, is this it? Is this like really what I've worked so hard for? Because by all measure, I had achieved what I was supposed to have achieved. And I was still like, okay, is this it? Right? Is this it? But what would happen was I would shut that voice down because, as I said, I had invested a lot to get to that place. Right. And so the idea of entertaining that question, is this it, was too scary, because that would mean that I'd have to make a change. And if it
Sure.
wasn't this, then what was it? Right.
Yeah.
And that was a big empty question. So I shut it down for a long period of time until the universe, in all her infinite wisdom, was like, oh no, sister, we're shutting this down for you and we're putting you on a new path. And that's really kind of what happened. So I was faced with the rather daunting task at the time of having to really reinvent myself and my life.
That's awesome. That's so cool. How did you go about like increasing your intuition and tapping into more of that self-trust as you shifted and stripped some of that identity in
Yeah,
realizing that like I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the certification, the degree, the work, the achievements, all of that kind of stuff. How did you
right.
tap into more of that self-trust?
It I would love to say that I just immediately switched paths and was on a new one. No.
I would love to hear that too, and so would everyone else because we're all looking for that little magic wand to wave, right? Hey, before we continue with the episode, one quick question. Have you joined the Becoming More Me community on School? If yes, I'm so grateful for you. And if no, what are you waiting for? I have an amazing free community that houses over $15,000 worth of my most requested resources, things you can start digging into and using today, actionable resources to start changing how you feel and show up in your life. things that are going to support you on your never-ending journey of becoming, and amazing community members to support you as well. Hop over to skool.com. That's skool.com/discovery and put my name in the search bar, Teresa Lear Levine. You will see the Becoming More Me community pop right up, and you can request to join from there. Inside of the community, you will find a full classroom of resources, as well as anything that you need in order to join my small group coaching or my one-on-one coaching. And I can't wait to see you over there. Again, go to www.skool.com/discovery, type in my name, Teresa Lear Levine, and request to join the Becoming More Me community. I can't wait to see you there.
And this for me was really the gift, in that I was forced into stillness. So everything that had kept me busy in my life was completely stripped away. I was too sick to get out of bed. And so it forced me to be still. And in that stillness was all of these, and all of these questions that were coming up for me, and recognizing that I didn't have answers, and I didn't have anywhere to go to avoid the questions. So I had to sit with them. And, as I just, I would lie in bed for days on end. And at that point I wasn't sleeping. I would lie in bed for days on end, just asking, like, why me? What's next? Who am I? Like, all these questions just over and over and over again. And then slowly I recognized that there was this tiny little voice inside me, right, that would just kind of answer simple questions. And I said, okay, if that's all I have to listen to right now, then that's it. So I started trusting myself with really, really tiny, tiny things. Like, what do you want for lunch? Right? It might be a chocolate chip cookie, even though there was this like chatter in the back of my mind that's like, well, you should be having salad and some protein, right?
But what do
But
you
I was
really
like, no.
want?
Right. And I'd be like, okay, I'm listening to that voice. And then slowly over time, as I tuned in more and more, and followed that guidance, because honestly, I had no choice. It was a big experiment for me, actually, right? I had no choice. There was nothing else to do. So I'm like, okay, let's see this. And, it was that little voice that would, sometimes lead me across the street to the park, across the street from my house, where sometimes I would just sit under a tree and I would just sit there. I realize now what I was actually doing is grounding. I did not know that at the time, but I would just sit with my back against the tree, and that's when the inspiration to write came to me. So I started writing about what I was experiencing and the questions that I was asking myself, which is what in fact turned into the Old Chicks No Shit blog.
Okay.
And that kind of started the whole thing. So it really was just leaning into the tiniest questions, right? And just asking myself small things and following that and then building trust over time, much like you would a relationship with anybody new that you met in your life, right? It was really getting to know myself, right? Because we wouldn't likely trust a stranger who walked up to us on the street and said, "Oh, you should go right." And you'd be like, "Okay, yeah, go away," right? But when you start to build that relationship, and then somebody says, "You should go right," you go, "Okay, let me try that." So it really was a process of getting to know myself and building that relationship.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So before all this midlife crisis stuff, you were, an executive in a Fortune 500 company. You were doing all that. How is that so much different than what you're doing now?
What a great question. It really was different because so much of my life, so that my career included, was based on external validation. Was I a good employee? Was I doing the right thing for the company? Was I a good wife? Was I a good mother? Right? Everything, all of that validation in my life was from external. It was outside of myself. And and I think as women, we're taught that, right? We're taught to seek validation outside of ourselves. And so we don't trust our own validation. And so a lot of what I was doing was proving, right? Trying to prove that I was good enough, right? Look, I have a great job, a great title, I get really tons of perks and benefits and stuff like that. so I must be okay. I must be doing things right. Like the world sees me in a certain way, and that's good. But a lot of that was based on coming from a place of not enoughness,
Mm.
right? And needing to prove. And what I know now that I didn't know then is that the energy of needing to prove all the time is extremely draining. It takes an immense amount of energy. And so it's no wonder that my body at some point was like, oh no, we're shutting this down now. Like, here you come, burnout, because I didn't realize like how much of my life was spent seeking that external validation. But again, it's because I was following the checklist, right? Like I was doing what they told me I should be doing. And a lot
Right.
of my questions were like, I was doing everything right. How did I end up here? Right. But the thing that was missing in the whole equation was actually me. So much of what I do now, in fact, pretty much all of what I do now is guided by my own intuition, what feels really good to me. Like where am I being called next? What feels right? So a lot of that, like that big shift has been, it's like a breath of fresh air, really. It's like a big
Mm.
exhale, right? When you can just like let go of caring what other people think or what you should be doing and
Yeah.
doing what feels right. And so really leaning into my body and what's happening in my body, because previous to that, I did not have a relationship with my body, other than the fact that it was kind of the stick that held up my head,
But you had one.
right? Right, exactly. And I would try and beat it into some shape, form, or size,
Hmm.
right? But other than that, I had no relationship with her. And
Yeah.
now I am so hyper aware of the immense amount of wisdom that lives within us, like within our
Oh yeah.
bodies.
Oh yeah. The
Yeah.
body mind connection is like people talk about it and a lot of people mention it. They have not really actually explored what's in there and all of it's so deep
Yeah.
the way the
It's so
connection
deep.
there and what we can get to
Yeah.
know when we really do connect the two and go deep with it. And I
Yeah.
feel like, midlife is it is like a breath of fresh air. I think that's almost a summary of midlife for me. And I wonder if it's that way for the majority of people. But I really love this position because of so many of the reasons that you just mentioned. And I'm wondering what you think about how women can really leverage midlife and their experiences to create more fulfillment.
Oh, another fantastic question. Yeah, I think, for midlife, for many of us, the transition is bumpy, right? Like because we are for the most part, um, pretty disconnected from ourselves. And so when we come into this chapter of our lives and, everything is changing, like physically, mentally, emotionally, everything is shifting. So the foundation on which we built our lives feels very shaky. And that transition can feel like, the world was ripped out from underneath your feet. And a lot of women struggle with that. And so I don't want to downplay, this, but on the other side of it, like you mentioned, right? If you can kind of align with what your life is telling you, what your body is telling you, right? On the other side of it is that immense amount of freedom. But that transition point can be really, really bumpy. And I think it's directly related to how out of alignment you are with yourself. So for me,
Sure.
it was a very rocky transition because I was very out of alignment with who I am as a person.
Right.
And
What
I
you
like I worked
identify
in the
with.
finance and yeah, I worked in the finance industry actually in the credit card business. And there was a lot of parts of that business that I was just like, oh, but it's just like, okay, this is what we got to do.
I
So
spent
we
some
would
time
do
in that
it.
industry too. It definitely, it's like when you look back on it, so you really, I feel like I see the misalignment more than when I was in it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. Um, but on the other side of it, when we can start to like pay attention to what's happening inside of us, to start listening to our body, that's when like that connecting with ourselves and starting to tune into our own intuition is where we find our gifts, because
Mhm.
the answer to every question we have is already inside of us. Our job is to get quiet and still enough so that we can hear it.
Yes.
And so when, so many women end up in my community who become my clients, and they come to me going, I don't know where to go from here. Like there has to be more to my life, but how do I figure this out? And
Hmm.
my job is really to direct them back to themselves, because the
Right.
answer is inside. And it is so amazing to me when you start having these conversations with women, and unpacking things. They already know what it is that they want to do, but they haven't yet given themselves permission to do it. or
Right.
it's the thing that comes up that you immediately shut down with the 15 reasons why it can't work and why you're not the person to do it.
Yeah.
But when you
And
start to unpack the layers of that, like women can, like, there's incredible things are being created in the world by women who are leaning into their gifts in midlife.
absolutely. And so often we see, at least with the women that I work with, a lot of entrepreneurs, professionals, coaches in the health industry, that sort of thing. They're always looking for like the next certification or the next thing they need to
Right.
learn to make themselves more worthy, more valuable, whatever, instead of seeing that inherent worth and value that is there already in all the ways that they can help people without learning a single thing.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
it's
it's so
it's
beautiful to watch, actually.
absolutely. So you have, is it a program or a community, the Maven Collective?
Yeah, so I run a mastermind community for midlife women who are on the journey of transition through their lives. So reinventing themselves or some part of their lives. For a lot of them, it's careers. And it really is a community where women come together to support each other, for accountability, for visibility, and to not feel so alone on this journey. Because it can feel like when you're out there creating something new and maybe you're friends or your family or your peers don't get it, you can feel very, very alone in that journey. So coming into community with other women who get it, who understand the ups and downs and the fears, the women who can hold your belief for you on the days that you are struggling with it, will hold you accountable to your highest and best. Like, the women in this community, um so they're so ridiculously inspiring to me as well too,
Of
because
course.
the things that they are creating in the world are beautiful. Like, they're world changing, right? Like, they're going
Mhm.
to change people's lives. And watching them connect with each other to support each other and remind each other how important it is for them to bring that thing to reality, is it's again it's the power of midlife women in a collective is unstoppable. Let me just say that.
So true.
Yeah,
Underestimated.
highly underestimated.
Awesome. That's what I was curious about, was how the collective was empowering and supporting midlife women, and you pretty much just answered that. So that's beautiful. I'm so glad that you have that resource for women in
Yeah.
midlife. And so at your age, 58, what do you like to do to stay energetic and to feel the vitality and the life in you as much as possible as you grow a little bit
Mhm.
older each year?
Yeah, I am a big fan of movement.
Hmm.
I actually did not realize how important movement is for me, for my own creativity as well, too, right? I am not a good
Yes.
person to be sitting at a desk with my fingers on a keyboard, which is how I
Right.
spent 30 years of my career. I need to get up and move. So movement is a huge part of my life.
Yes.
I go to the gym, I lift weights, I do a lot of walking, like I said, spending time on the lake paddleboarding. But also making sure that every single solitary day there's time for connection with myself, because even having come through this, we are constantly growing and evolving, and what might have felt right a year ago or even 6 months ago maybe doesn't feel right anymore. And
Yeah.
really just checking in to make sure that I'm staying in alignment with who I am at this point in time. So that is a huge part of, I start every day that way, with a walk and with like checking in, alignment. What is it that I want? What am I creating? Visualization is a huge part of that as well too. And
Yeah.
just, yeah, just like, you know being focused on the things that it is that I want to create, because those give me energy. So I talk a lot about energy depleting activities versus energy renewing activities, and I probably work as hard, if not a little bit harder, than I did in my corporate job. But the difference is energy renewing activities versus energy depleting activities.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
I know I
So the
often
more
wish.
yeah,
Sorry, I was saying I
sorry.
often wish that we could podcast record like while walking or something. Like if I had better reception in my
Yes.
neighborhood, if I had a better setup, maybe some kind of a camera I could dangle in front of my face while I was walking, I feel like I would have even better conversations in movement. It's one of my favorite times when I'm out walking to actually like message my clients
Yes.
or talk with people
Oh
or
yeah.
whatever else while the body's moving. And I also tend to get really creatively inspired, and I'm leaving myself voice notes as I'm walking about all the ideas that
100%.
are streaming in. So it's I love
Yeah,
it. I walk
exactly.
several times a day for that particular reason, because I feel like my work is
Yeah.
enriched by me moving throughout the day.
100%. Or even, like sometimes I'll be like, trying to write something and it's not flowing, and I'll go down to the kitchen and just chop vegetables for dinner. And even in the process of just
Mhm.
chopping, I'm like, oh, look, this thing that I was struggling with for 2 hours just like totally fixed itself in 15 minutes.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So if you could go back and give that younger self who was, going through everything in corporate America and in that marriage and everything else, a piece of advice, what would you tell her? Hey, interrupting this episode super quick because I'll bet you didn't know that you can hop on a free, no strings 15-minute call with me and get answers and insights into those things that are challenging you the most in your life and business right now. And receive several insights from me that will really help you to start moving the needle in those areas where you desire transformation, be it your business, your personal life, your health, wealth, relationships, all the things. So go to gamechangingconversation.com, select a time, and we will meet and have a conversation about what's going on in your life and the outcomes that you would most like to create in the next several months. Can't wait to meet you and chat with you on a call. Now back to the episode.
I would tell her to really connect inwards, like get to know yourself, right? And get to know yourself and get to know your body, because what feels right and what's in alignment for you it's there, and you just have to pay attention to it. And when you
Yeah.
step out of alignment, you will know it very, very clearly, right? And if you allow that alignment to guide your path, you do not have to take the rocky road that I did. In fact, I highly don't recommend anybody do it the way that I did it, because it was, like, what is it? The universe gives you a nudge. It gives you a wink, then it gives you a nudge. And if you're still not listening, you get the brick in the head. Yeah, I was the brick in the head. I highly, highly advise that nobody do it that way, but you don't have to do it that way if you are tuned in to what's happening inside you and, really feeling into that alignment with what feels good for you.
Oh, I love that. That's great. And that's the kind of thing I always love to revisit through inner child work, where you go back and you tell her just that thing and upgrade her into the version of life that you're living right now, where you already know all of that is so true and you're embodying it. And that's
Yeah.
beautiful, Jennifer. I love that.
Because yeah, I mean, I feel like there's all of us have these moments where, we had a choice or a path and we ignored our own inner voice and did what we thought was expected of us. And we can probably
Mhm.
go back to those moments and being like, yeah, if I had said no then instead of yes, maybe things would have turned out differently. But it's being able to sit in those inflection points and feel into what feels right to you.
Yeah.
Because we all have them. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So I know that you support women in midlife, but they're chasing their dreams and they're creating that kick-ass next chapter, as you say. So what does being kick-ass mean to you in the context of midlife, and how can other women embody that mindset?
Yeah. So really your kick-ass next chapter, I define it as being living a life that feels really good to you in all aspects. So work that you love, relationships that are fulfilling, time for yourself, spending time on your health, like, because it's really hard to feel kick-ass if you're dragging it all the time, if you're not eating healthy. So really kind of dialing in all of those things to be focused on what feels good to you. And for some women, it might be their careers. For other women, their careers are very fulfilling, but maybe it's relationships or some aspect of their health, or maybe there's a physical challenge that they have wanted to tackle. But whatever it is, it's just really tuning into what feels good to you, because um, your kick-ass next chapter. So this is the thing, right? Like, we live in a culture that says, 50 is kind of the beginning of the end. It's the downhill slope to old age oblivion, and that you're supposed to just like coast into the finish line or ride off into the retirement sunset, whatever that looks like. Right. And we forget that, we have like a whole chapter of life ahead of us. And for some of us, like if we're turning 50, we might have 30 or 40, even more years ahead of us,
Oh, I hope
which
I
is
have at
sometimes like
least
the
50 more after 50, at least. Like I'll
right,
be
right,
disappointed if I don't get
exactly.
at least 100 years out of this trip in this meat suit.
Exactly. You and me both, right? And so when you think about it though, this is like the longest chapter of our lives yet. And, there are so many parts of us that have yet to be explored. And when we can go on this journey and explore all parts of like who we are creatively, mentally, emotionally, physically, like the best of who we are, and start exploring that, like that's an incredibly powerful life to live. And my
Sure.
mom died when she was 56, and every
Mm.
year that I get to live from here on in is like a complete gift to me, one that
Yeah.
she didn't get to have. And so I want to make the most of that I have with this time on earth. And so
Oh,
it's just really leaning into like, what are your dreams? What are your desires? And you're not too old. It's never too late. It's if you're breathing, it's never too late. So
so
take a tiny
true.
step in that direction. Yeah.
That's so true. I love that. What legacy do you hope to leave for like the next generation of women regarding aging and empowerment?
You know, it, I've over the summer especially, I have been to quite a few funerals of friends' parents, right? I'm at that age where like, friends' parents are passing on, and I've been paying a lot of attention to eulogies, right? Like what is it that people say about, their lives?
Mhm.
And, you know, the one thing I want people to say about my life is that it was well lived, right? Like she tried some things worked, some things didn't. You know what I mean? But she wasn't afraid to try. She wasn't afraid to go on that journey of exploration. And because like if I can leave that legacy for other people to say, you know what, like we take life too seriously. We take us
Oh,
too
we take ourselves.
seriously,
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
right?
I feel like that was
And
in one of Wayne Dyer's books or whatever. He recounted that story about people, and they kept referring, "No, remember rule number six," and everybody's talking, and things would happen.
oh,
And, no, 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 remember rule number six. And then finally, somebody asked, "Well, what's rule number six?" And it's like, "Stop taking yourself so damn seriously."
serious.
And like, well, then what's rule numbers one through five? There are no rules number one through five. But yeah, we do. We take
Yeah.
ourselves way too seriously.
Well, because when you look at, it's so funny because now, in the chair that I'm sitting at in this 58th trip around the sun, or I guess I'm on my 59th trip around the sun, when you look back at the rules that guided your life, now I look at them and I go, they don't even make sense. Like who made up these rules,
They're not
right?
even
Like
rules.
they're not even
They're just
rules, but
beliefs
yet
or things that got handed to you by somebody else or somebody else's
right.
beliefs or yeah.
Yeah. So throw the rule book out the window and just like live your own life. Because that's the thing. Everybody's living their own life. We all think we need to live this cookie cutter life that looks just like somebody else's, when our path might be something completely different. And to not be afraid to honor ourselves and our path and our dreams and our desires. Yeah, that would be the legacy that I would want to live, because I don't want to leave this planet with too much unexplored.
Yeah. I feel like I see more of the younger generation doing that, but I
Oh
also
yeah.
feel like I see more of our generation and older judging that, which is so very interesting, you know? And it's kind of like
Isn't
when
it
you look at
true?
those, like when people do illustrations of people who like break generational patterns or whatever, and there's always that like uncomfortable one in the middle that has to kind of shut out who came before while also kind of extending a hand to the one coming behind and that sort of thing. And that's kind of what I see. And I think if we could all
Yeah.
just embrace a little bit more of the love, acceptance, and forgiveness, we'd realize that growth and change that we really desire is happening. It just looks different than it did for us because they're going to be
Yeah.
different than we were. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's so true because, and I think like the women of our generation coming into this time of our lives, like we are not the same women as our mothers and our grandmothers were, right? Like we have so much more opportunity in front of us, right? And, as you know, we didn't see it modeled, right? I think the generations coming next, like I think about my daughter, for example, when I interviewed her on my podcast, right? She was saying things like, I'm so excited to see what my next chapter is. Well, I never even thought about a next chapter. Like it just wasn't on the radar. It was kind of like that blurry thing as the movie fades. You know what I mean? Right? It's just kind of something's going to happen out there, but I don't really know what, right? But as we step into this and really model this for the future generations, we are seeing things change. We're seeing it already, right? But we didn't see that. So it feels very foreign to us, you know, until we start to step into it. And that's why I feel like we owe it to ourselves, but we also owe it to the future women coming behind us to really show them what it means to be a woman in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? It doesn't have to be, rocking chairs and bladder leakage protection. Like that's not all of it.
Thank
Very
goodness.
valuable. We need all that stuff, right? But there's so much more of life to be had.
I'll take the rocking chair, but
I'll take the rocking chair, yeah. On the porch, yeah.
that actually sounds
Totally.
pretty lovely. I'll take that now. I don't feel like I need to wait for it,
Yeah.
but that's too funny. So, what does it look like to work with you in what you do, and what are the best places that people can connect with you if they're interested in learning more or participating in the things that you have to offer?
Yeah, so I work with people in two ways, one-on-one, and then also with the Maven Collective. So depending upon, a preference, some people like to work one-on-one, they prefer that. Other people prefer to be a part of the group.
Sure.
One of those two ways is how we work together. And then, of course, I also have the podcast as well, too. So you can find me under the name Old Chicks Know Shit. So that's Know. Although the NO works too, but
Yeah.
it's Know. On Instagram, on Facebook, I'm also on LinkedIn, the podcast. Yeah, those are all of the places. And then my website under the same name as well, too.
Amazing. Any closing thoughts or things that you would like to summarize this awesome conversation with?
Yeah, I just want to say that if there is a woman who is listening to this and you have a dream or a desire for your life, and even if it's this tiny little flicker of a thing, our dreams and desires are not random. They are parts of us that are looking to be expressed.
Yeah.
And so even if you can just, even if it's this thing that comes up that you shut down immediately, if you could just play with it a little bit today, right? When it pops up and just give it a little bit of space. You don't have to do anything with it, but just maybe think, what if, or how could I, or just ask a question, like be curious about it and just allow that desire to have a little bit of breathing space and see what it tells you.
Yeah,
Right?
I love that.
Because once we open that door to the possibility of the what if or could I, it becomes a little bit harder to shut it down again the next time it comes up. And then
I
we
love
allow
that.
it to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I've gotten kind of through this last part of the conversation is curiosity, which is super important, excitement through what you shared, like with your daughter, and knowing that those frequencies are just so expansive for us when we can actually get excited about things, and then connection and really connecting, our bodies to our minds and our hearts and our spirits and everything else. So thank you so much for this awesome conversation. I really appreciate you being here with me today. And you guys could all go check out Jennifer Arthurton on any of those platforms where she has Old Chicks Know Shit. So thanks so much for being here. And for all of you who are listening, I know you have like a million choices when it comes to podcasts to listen to. So thank you so much for tuning in to Becoming More Me. Thanks for spending some of your precious time with me today. If you loved this episode, please leave a review or simply share it with someone else who would get great benefit from it too. If you share on social media, please tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. And if your inner critic is still trying to argue with those facts, hit me up. We've got work to do.